Who drew the picture in front of your eyes? And so, let us begin in the moment where one human being decides to look at thought to discover the nature of clarity. When we look at our life, we're confronted by not just what we feel we are thinking when we're remembering things, but at the same time, a complete spatial and timal recognition. So, in one sense of time and space, we have another sense of time and space experience simultaneously present. When you have many experiences that are not in regards, they're not codependent, in a sense they are present at the same time, so there never was a relationship, And so, I guess what I'm trying to say is that when you look at thought, you are first looking at a sense of self, which you feel is you, and you don't need to explain because you feel this is you. So, for example, you know that your feet are on the ground, right? Do you see how instant that knowing is? Now, when we ask certain questions like, who are you, what's this truth and stuff, you're not getting that instant of a recognition. Well, how you do it is how you approach it actually is that you see that guy's thought is like a butterfly, and so you don't run at it, you don't try anything, you gently observe it, and as you do, you, in a sense, uncover more of what was hidden to you of your own intelligence. So what that means is that by finding newer ways to see, that too is similar to a treasure revealer of sorts, in which the treasure is your own greater understanding of how your experience is being done. What is actually occurring is that man is both creative with his past and his future, because man is in the present and is in a neutral moment. He can look back at his past and in a sense see many variations of it after going through the action. You see, once you see the brush that is drawing every moment, you realize that the color was never, it was never the brush. The color was never the brush. The brush was held differently. Color was a different nature, Our reality is deep in the sense that there are many ways of looking at it, and so if we are a being that is looking at something and experiencing reality, so we are keeping a moment of existence present. And so when you recognize that you're a moment of existence that is present, your thoughts also belong to the moment. When the moment has an unknown peak, you never settle on the bottom. Because if you do settle on the bottom, eventually your curiosity of the unknown will pull you. No man is satisfied because man is a being that is exploring its greater expressions. So actually what you will see brings vitality is you trying new things every day rather than you trying the same things in the same way of thought. You see, everything in this reality moves, but your attention can rebuild you. So what that means is that you're no longer the same person after you have attention to things you didn't have before. Simply your attention is more. So what that means is that if there's, for example, a party or a gathering, and I've been to the place before, I exactly know where it is. I don't need any directions or instructions. But even if I want to join a sense of party, but if I don't even know who I am, you guys need to realize that the greatest gift that you can give, and which is in a sense Mr.Within's gift, is to really see that when you look at yourself, you'll get fascinated by who you are. You will get fascinated, and you will see that as you are more fascinated by the things you do, eventually you begin expressing and producing. So what that means is that the thoughts that you're getting, the ideas you're getting on a daily basis are so exciting and interesting for you that there's a constant outburst of them in regards to linear structure. So the nonlinear has always inspired the linear, and so we see that what man couldn't see has always gave him his push into his pull. The nature of thought is elusive because that is how it is constructed for you in your observance. But observance is not one that needs comparison. So you will see that once you sit by objects, it is you that is putting the life in the objects. So that emanation is at first the origin. So what I'm saying is your sense of omniscience is that you are the foundation which everything else is built upon. Your architecture is your own. So what that means is that once you look at the nature of reality, you see that you're that guy who the reason he became extremely honest was because he became extremely serious at really looking at what's here. And you see there are different types of researchers. There are researchers who sit down in locked rooms where their physicality and their body and the environment that you're in is your most immediate influence. So what that means is that where you look at your thoughts is important. So if I sit by a dumpster, I could think of a beautiful breeze in my imagination, but it could just, there's the smell there too, You, because we have free will in a sense and conscious control, we want to make the greatest decision that a conscious being can, and that is one that is efficient holistically. So you will see that if all this time you've been thinking of what's the best thing for me, what should I do, how should I survive, that mentality has been keeping you in an energetic state where opportunities have been just flying over you. Because we are human beings, we are natural beings. And so a depressed person is similar to an animal that is like growling. Because you see, it creates discomfort, and people know when others growl. And so what that means is that there are some people who are insensitive because they're keeping themselves insensitive because survival has given that as the most beautiful passage. But, there are many things that perhaps Darwin could not see, because the reason he could not see was the reason he was inspired to find. You are seeking a sense of being that is aware of itself. That awareness is a formless presence where, in regards to knowing, you have that instant of knowing. However, you will become aware how the non-linear flows are manifesting into linear structure in your mind. It is very important for human beings, any person who is having an experience which they feel is very, interesting or new, write it down and communicate it. Understand that the greatest thing the human being has is his communication with life. And so communicate things well, and that sense of well comes from a sense of clarity. You want to be a clear human being. You want to be someone that is aware of what is happening in the sense that you're not always trying to control it. You know. The man that knows holds a scarf around his neck that the man that doesn't have. Because that scarf is covering, in a sense, providing a potential that many cannot see. If you think reality is a story which you're not convinced of, you will doubt even your story of existence. So what happens is that one cannot say God does not exist and then also hang on to their own ideas of what life is. You see, man's mind is confused when he is trying to figure out things as man. But when man stops and looks around, he sees that the reason man knows he's man is because there are many relevancies to man. Man is defined by what is not man. So man is defined based on the comparison it has with animal, with plants, with everything around it. So you cannot ignore how the moment of your awareness is always a sense of self-awareness, to the degree that regardless if you think or don't think, the knowing is there. What many people call intuition is actually tapping into a subtler level of trust in your imagination, in the sense that the story that is always being linearly analyzed is being analyzed slower and allowing more of an intuitive influence to come. So you see, imagine the imagination of your imagination. So what that means is, think of how you become aware of a thought, and at the same time, that thought is having its own reaction to how you're becoming aware of it. So how I suddenly go in a room, imagine all the objects and I see everything. Imagine how everything else, how the room experiences you, and how you experience the room. And you see, in these two considerations, space and time is simply an expression which is beyond your level of certainty. But in a sense, that certainty, that there is uncertainty, shows you the ability of omniscience, the ability of omnipresence. The nature of the mind is fantastically able to program itself and rebuild itself in many ways, because I have seen it. Because you will see that at first you as an identity and an ego want to feel safe. So your sense of safety is by your involvement, and you see a lot of people feel that it's easier to get involved by saying no. So in other words, someone saying, I don't believe in God, they don't even care about it, they simply are involved in the action of doing it. And so you see, the human being is not aware of, in a sense, its sensitivity to empathy. Or one sees that the reason human beings are separated is how their humanity is being made aware of. Because if human beings were like drops, we would never be just a human being. We would evolve immediately. You see, let me tell you like this. Imagine you're standing on the edge of a waterfall, beside the edge of a waterfall. And it's in the early morning, and you just feel that morning wind with the morning sun rays just hit you. And as you feel that, imagine now this is how I'm going to explain how a sense of co-creation within our subtler levels of imagination takes place, in my view, in Mr.Within's view. So, let's add to the database of conscious experience, always, and its entrance into unconscious. You see that a being becomes aware of how it's surviving, and so immediately tries to maintain its survival, because if it thinks that if it does not, it will fade. When you see that your imagination gives you an allowance to create complexity, you don't think creating complexity is a bad thing, actually. Guys, a complex world will provide gold mines of simple teachings that are, in a sense, natural, universal principles. When I say you learn from yourself, and when I say you're on that edge of the waterfall, I want you to see that you are still, your body is present, and you are aware as a being that your body is here, and suddenly many flows of winds and different currents come, and you feel these different currents are just these different flows of energy just passing through. And you see that your imagination is, in a sense, observing your livelihood to a degree that your interaction with your imagination is best done in a natural and alive sense. In other words, many people don't trust their ideas because they are seeing them as an object. So what that means is that if I judge a person by his looks without knowing who he is, I might not talk to him. That's what a lot of people are doing in regards to exploring their own awareness. The reason Mr. Within talks, or The reason I talk is to show you that we as beings must expand our ability to confront any conception. We want to be beings who can communicate. Let us say that if there weren't any aliens, okay? Let's say we don't know if they're aliens, but we're just this race on a planet who's trying to realize, okay, how do I connect to this? What is the point of being here? And so many people have reached a very ancient and very old soul type realization that balance is done by accepting the presence of greater cycles within your presence. So once you see the human being aware of this, once the human being having self-awareness, he then becomes a creative process. So perhaps the way humanity is evolving can be as similar as the design of how a petal opens up. And you standing by the waterfall realize that you can instantly let go and have an experience as an experiencer. And you can also remain in different ratios in regards to also being an objective being. So what that means is that I could stop myself from anything, but I could also stop myself from stopping. And so that is the wisdom, that you don't need to change your environment. You just recognize that the nature of your being cannot be individuated when it's always dissolving into its collective knowing or presence. Guys, collective consciousness means we as human beings are looking at one another and we're like, okay, we are humanity. Let's see how we can find technologies into communicating with the cosmos. So we have scientific technologies, brilliant. Now, what are the technologies we have? Well, we don't consider them technology, but we have this crazy thing called art where random people around the world are getting inspirations into creating creativity in a certain way. What are all those people who are inspired interpreting into momentum for themselves? The sense of cultivating and knowing that they belong to the eyes that open from within. You see, metaphors become stepping stones because they allow you to navigate. So what that means is that if you could visualize, for example, a poet's mind, the way a poet's mind works is, this is my experience, I consider myself, I guess, a poet of the moment, but you recognize that when one looks at life, they are already being looked at by life. Once you begin closing your eyes and becoming aware of who is it that is aware, you see that the question and the way the question has been made is not really you. So at times the questions that we feel bother us are simply our attention on irrational ideas which are rational to another sense of intelligence that we possess, and that is a self-awareness type of intelligence. So what that means is that there's one intelligence which is probably hanging on your wall and is your education degree, and there's another sense of intelligence where if it was the apocalypse, you would not chase for material goods, but to, in a sense, recollect yourself and become completely present and, in a sense, absorb into the presence that is present within all beings. And when I say this, because you need to recognize this, you will see that life is kind and cool, and it is, in a sense, any combination of a response to an observance of that moment. Once you begin observing yourself more, you will see that your first teachings and lessons in regards to you expanding, in a sense, your consciousness, as they say, everybody says nowadays. It's not really expanding, I think remembrance is more closer. So the way you remember is not by chasing for a memory or trying to think about a memory, but allowing a sense of attraction to bring it to you. Trust who you are to the degree that when you walk, you have no fear, no sense of doubt or guilt. You simply know that whatever comes your way, honesty, is truly the transparency of man and the man in the mirror. Teachings will come, memories will integrate. You will see that even all moments of deconstruction are integrative because you're aware of it. You will see that every look that you have seen belongs to a greater gaze. And what that means is that it longs to be in the presence of a greater awareness of itself. Utilize who you are by involving yourself in life so naturally, so beautifully, that when death comes, you inspire it to live. Much blessings.